Hey guys, this is Phil, and today we're going to be talking about communications, or comms. Communication is one of the best ways to ensure success on the battlefield. In large milsim games, commanders will use communication to receive information so they can make timely strategic decisions, while on smaller skirmishes, airsofters will communicate in order to adapt to changing battlefield conditions on the fly. Now, that being said, communication is one aspect that a lot of airsofters don't seem to get quite right. And that seems to be because we don't practice our communication skills as much as we practice the rest of our airsoft skills. So what we'll do today is we'll look at some communication tips and tricks that will help you get a little bit more practice and be more efficient on the field. Let's get to it. The first thing to note about communication is that it doesn't necessarily involve a radio. Anytime that you have information that you need to convey to someone else, you're going to want to remember the ABCs of communication: accuracy, brevity, and clarity. Accuracy simply means that the information you pass on is accurate. So if you say there's 3 enemy, there's actually 3 enemy and not 5. That's pretty simple. But the other piece to accuracy is being precise with the information that you give. So if you say that you're under fire, you want to specify that by saying you're under fire from the northeast or from that building in the south. This ensures that the information you pass on is as accurate and as specific as possible. After accuracy comes brevity. That means being as brief as possible. Typically, when we're relaying information, this is what we would call a time is life situation. You have information that you need to pass on to someone else so that they can make a timely decision. So you need to make sure that your information is conveyed as small a time as possible so they have the most amount of time to make their decision. The last part is C, for clarity, and that means being as clear and as unambiguous as possible. If we listen to military and police radio procedures, we often hear them using procedural words or pro words like sitrep and CASEVAC. These are shortened words that have a specific meaning to everyone in that particular unit, and this is where airsofters will sometimes fall into a trap. If we base our radio procedures on what we hear in TV and movies and videos, we'll be using pro words that we know, but the receiver of our message might not be familiar with them. So as an example, if I tell you that I'm Oscar Mike or I'm RTB, if you don't know what that means, I then need to repeat my message to you a second time and clarify my meaning. Pro words are fine to use if you have a team of people who are all familiar with what they mean. But if you're playing at a game with random players that you may not know, it's much more efficient to be clear and unambiguous and spell out your message to avoid having to say it again. If you are using a radio, here are a few things that you're going to want to keep in mind. Number one, on most radios, there is a delay between the time that you hit the push to talk, the PTT, and the time that your message actually gets transmitted. This means that if you hit the PTT and start talking right away, the first part of your message will get cut off and the receiver will never hear it. So the best practice in this case is to push the PTT, wait for about 1 second, and then start talking. That will make sure your whole message gets to the receiver uninterrupted. The second thing about radios is that it's two-way communication only. It's not like a cell phone. You can't pick the particular person you want to call. So what this means is that if you have 10 people on a particular channel, all 10 people will hear your message. So it's extremely important for you to identify who you're calling or who the intended receiver of your message is, who you are, and what you're calling about, and give them a chance to reply. So as an example, I might say, Chris, this is Phil, I have a message, over. This gives Chris an opportunity to say to me, stand by, I'm under fire, or go ahead and send the message. By communicating in this way, it also ensures that the other people on the channel know that the message is not for them. So they can listen if they want to, but they don't need to reply to it. Before you start transmitting your message, take a second to think about what you're going to say before you actually say it. This will keep you from rambling while you're on your radio call and will make the message as short as possible. It's also worth noting that on most radios, the microphone tends to be quite sensitive, especially if you're running a PTT switch or if you have a headset. This means that you can deliver your message at a normal indoor speaking voice. You do not need to shout into your radio. Now we see this in movies and YouTube videos all the time. Soldiers that are under fire, under stress, shouting, barking orders into their radio. And while that makes for great drama, it is not the most efficient use of your radio. What happens when you shout into your radio is that the volume blows it out, the message gets garbled, and if the person is wearing an earpiece, it's going to be quite loud for them and potentially painful. So before you transmit your message, take a second, take a breath, think about what you're going to say, calm down, and deliver your message at a normal indoor speaking voice. Our last comms tip is don't overcomplicate your communications. If you're trying to come up with radio procedures for your team, keep it simple. Instead of using call signs that not everyone might be familiar with, try using your first names. Instead of a list of 20 pro words, try 4 or 5. Keep the basics and fundamentals simple, and as your team becomes more proficient with them, you can add on more complexity. Remember, the ultimate aim of communication is to pass information that you have to someone else who needs it to make a timely, tactical decision. We hope you found these tips helpful and that they will help increase your efficiency and effectiveness on the battlefield. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the box below. And as always, if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.